Heidi ho! Welcome everybody. The first Thursday of June. We're kicking into summer here. It's been a busy couple of months with the party. Another trip up there. Raj and I went to Austin Hope or Hope at the Park and poured some wine for a day, and that was a lot of fun. And
Oh, yeah.
we had a really good time. Nice people, very nice people work there. Who's got Somebody's got an open mic.
Sorry, that's
Okay, sorry. Anyway, so that was a lot of fun, and we went to Wine Fest, and that was a first for some of us. I believe I was there back in the mid 2000s, or early, and when it was in the park. But then we had not been since it moved to the event center. We had a really good time, and got to see a lot of great people and had a fantastic time. So, anyways, that was a lot of fun. So, why are we here tonight? I had Craig brought up before we went to Adelaida a few years ago, and I've been subsequently. I've been there 3-4 times, and every time we went there, um, the servers would always, they go, well, Jeremy does things this way, and Jeremy says we have to do it this way, and Jeremy says we can't do that, and Jeremy says we're going to do this, and I go, well, who's this guy Jeremy? You know, like where is he? Bring him out. you know. And anyways, I never got to meet you. Oh, we talked about the champagne one time, and you had the champagne, and then they go, oh, my wife loves it, and she goes, well, we couldn't make it this year, and so it was always about Jeremy. So, and I love the wine, and I thought, let's get Jeremy on and explain himself. So here we're gonna find out a little bit Jeremy, and actually, I got to tell you what, he has quite a career before wine, during wine. He's done a lot of different things, and I think you're going to find him very interesting. And welcome, Jeremy. And I'm going to let Jason kick it off here.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Mike, thank you all for dialing in tonight. Jeremy, thank you for joining us. Uh, as Mike said, we're going to get into, before we get into this extensive wine journey, we want to kind of dig into pre-wine for you and know a little bit about what Jeremy was doing before he got into wine. And before we started out, where are you from originally, Jeremy?
I'm from Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York. I think in a few years of doing this, you're the first that we've had from New York in general.
Yeah.
Certainly from Long Island.
I hope I represented okay today. So, you know.
So what was young Jeremy up to? Pre-wine.
But the pre-wine, the prison sentence, and the wilding.
Rikers Island, yeah.
Yeah. So there is a wine region on Long Island. So I will touch on that only because it does relate somewhat to how I got here. Believe it or not, there's a wine industry on Long Island. My family does not own vineyards. I don't come from or land in any sense. My dad's family was in fishing, so all of his family, in fact, so his dad had a fish restaurant, his grandfather had a fish restaurant. My mom's a social worker, and her dad was a chemist for DuPont. And my parents were both from Delaware, and came up for my dad's work to Long Island. So I grew up as an only child, which probably explains any number of things. But I was not aware of a wine industry, and using quotes. I grew up drinking wine with my family. But on Long Island at that time, there was no California wine, or at least it never entered my household. So we drank, and I would say yes. I mean, wine was part of the table when I was growing up, which may explain some other things, right? But I grew up drinking Italian and German and French wines. So probably somewhere in, because of that formative experience, that was that sort of set some kind of a tone in the wines that I drink, and maybe how I approach wine. But I grew up on Long Island. I moved after college to DC. I worked in DC for a couple of years at the end of the first Bush administration and beginning of Clinton administration. And at that time, there was a recession in 1991, 92, not a lot of jobs. I did restaurant work. I worked at a think tank in DC, and moved up to New York because I just wanted to be in the city. I mean, I had all kinds of weird jobs in high school, everything from landscaping to working on a TV show in the city after I finished high school, and before going to college.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. Thankfully, someone let me into college. It was academics were not my strong point in high school, and probably weren't anything that I mean, I was not a focused student until I turned 20, probably. And apologies to my family for wasting all of the money for 2 years. But I studied political science and economics, and which has given me the view of government that I have now, and that's across the board government. So it kind of enlightened me to what's going on in the world in general and in our country and that sort of thing. So I felt like I finally started getting serious just about wanting to understand the world or learn about things. And that was college, and that's what took me to DC.
And then from DC to New York.
Right. So if you don't mind, I'll jump into the wine thing, only because there are these tangents that I could go down that would
Don't mind at all.
Okay.
And I am curious about the New York Wine Connection. I know Finger Lakes is a big region up there, but
Right.
yeah, for sure.
So before my junior year of college, I really was lacking any kind of real skills as a 20-year-old, and a friend of my mom's was working at a tasting room at a Long Island winery, and this was in 1990. So I was a 20-year-old, and I got a job working in the tasting room there. But I spent most of the time bugging the winemaker who had worked at Mondavi in the 70s, had worked in Bordeaux in the 80s. He's now retired. He's in his 70s, but I'm sorry. Oh, I thought that was a question.
I thought I heard something too, but
yeah, but I spent a lot of time probably not taking care of customers in the tasting room, because it was fascinating listening to this person, Eric Fry, speak about his approach to wine and grape growing. It took another 10 years before I returned to wine. So after I finished college, like I said, I worked in DC, moved up to New York. I wrote for some financial magazines. Could I answer some questions about Latin American debt? Possibly. I could remember a few things, but it was not, the job paid well, and it was a way to get me up to New York City. and that's where I lived until I was 30, and had the realization that I was not meant to be writing about finance. So it took a little while. But I thought back on that summer that I'd worked in the tasting room. It was the first time I fell in love. And, it was just a really exciting thing to be learning something new every day.
So what kind of wines are they pouring in that tasting room? I know Felix is known for a lot of the white wines, but what?
Well, right. And I think the Finger Lakes has probably some of the best Rieslings in the country, if not the best. Long Island wine industry started in the 1900s. And like many other wine growing regions in California, Napa included, looked to Bordeaux as the model to model their wines and the grapes. So there was Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, of course, Burgundy, but that's what sold, right? Because those are the most, and are still the most recognizable varietals. And that's why they sold, and that's why they were planted. It's sandy on Long Island, and it's surrounded by two warm-ish bodies of water. There's the Atlantic Ocean and Peconic Bay. And the belief was that the growing conditions were exactly the same as Bordeaux, which of course is not true. The similarities, there are some similarities, meaning there are hurricanes occasionally on Long Island. There's spring frost. There's downy mildew in the spring. I mean, there are some similarities, but none of them having to do with wine quality.
And it's probably on a similar parallel as
yes,
Bordeaux,
it is.
Right?
It is, and that's right, exactly. So again, when I turned 30 and I was writing in Manhattan for a financial magazine, I just decided that was not what I wanted to do, and I quit my job, and I was commuting on my motorcycle for a year out from Brooklyn to Long Island to work on a vineyard. So in the summer, I drove the tractor and sprayed God knows what. I have an idea what it was now, but at the time, it was an open air tractor. And in the fall, I worked the harvest, and that was in 1999. So I loved doing that. I didn't know about what I would do as far as career goes or how I could do this, because I was not buying a winery. I was not buying a vineyard, not on my salary or anything that my parents had ever made. But Long Island has Cornell has a cooperative extension out on Long Island, and they would bring in winemakers and farm advisors from all over to give their observations and their opinion on Long Island grape growing and winemaking. And Dave Ramey, who is a famous Napa Sonoma winemaker, had come out, and after the talk, I told him that I had a lot of interest in doing this, and what could I do, and what was his advice, and he suggested going back to school. So I never took any science classes when I was in college, and it took me 2 years of science classes to then get into a graduate program in California. And I came out to Fresno first to study viticulture. There was a nascent master's program going on, but it wasn't actually happening at the time. It now does have one. And so I then transferred to Davis, and still on my motorcycle, moved everything up. I never fully moved into Fresno. So I had a futon that I just left and took my stuff on my motorcycle and moved up to Davis.
I have two questions.
Please.
They're wine related. Well, not really. Uh, Mets, Yankees, Islanders, Rangers. Which was that? How'd that work?
Mets. Mets
There you
is
go.
Mets is it's the normal Mets, because for a lot of different reasons. Number one being it's the sort of working class person's team.
I like that description.
And Islanders.
Oh,
Yeah,
Translate
I
to
was a
the Knicks
Rangers
as well.
guy.
but we've got the Knicks in the finals, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's very exciting.
Long time coming.
Yes, indeed. And Jets. So that's another frustrating thing.
I actually was living there when the Knicks won the championship.
Oh, in 70. Wow.
Yeah. So
Go
ahead.
So you're at UC Davis,
Right.
getting educated,
I was
learning
getting
viticulture.
Yeah, I mean, I need to go to anyone can make a career out of making wine without going to school and learning any of that. I was just interested in why things happen, and I didn't think I was going to just learn that from my own observational skills or just working. I wanted to understand things a little bit better. And so when I went to Davis, I actually didn't take any wine making classes. I worked on a thesis about how what affects tannins and color in wine. So I had 50 wineries from California up through Washington State send me samples. And when they were doing experiments, these wineries, and that includes some vineyard samples, I would have them send me a control and have them send me a treatment, whatever that might be. So if we put mylar sheets down in the vineyard outside of McMinnville or something, will the sunlight that's reflected off of the ground change the color of the Pinot Noir berries significantly? Would it do anything? So, I mean, from that to punch downs, pump overs, I looked at all of these things. And the big takeaway for me was that there is no answer about, these techniques, which, truthfully are practiced all over the world. And yet all over the world, the wines are different depending on where the grapes are grown, which led me to site, which is my own, the site being the most important thing, determining quality in a glass of wine. But we can come to that. But that was the most useful thing, and to just kind of test my assumptions. So if I did something one year, I'm not necessarily going to do it this year because it resulted in that doesn't mean that it's going to result in the same thing. So that was the value of the graduate education for me, really. It's just kind of questioning things.
That's fascinating, though. Your thesis was, did I hear you right, say both what impacted color and tannins?
Yes.
And at least for color, no clear determination, but tannins, I assume there's clear correlation on what contributes to the tannins, all right?
The only thing that is clear is that so if you're thinking about extraction of tannins, that temperature and time are the two things that will help to extract. But the amount of tannin that's in a wine, and sorry if this gets too deeply into the weeds, but the amount of tannin, anthocyanin, the color compounds that are in wine have almost nothing to do with what's in the grape. What's in the grape, what's in the wine, maybe 30%, 35% of what's in the grape. What's in the grape ends up in the pomace.
So I got it. So it wasn't about seeds and skins and stems and barrel. It was about what naturally is in the grape that might influence tannins.
What's in the grape, plus those things like temperature and time and the vintage. So
Oh,
Mother
okay.
Nature is, that's a variable that's really difficult to predict.
Yeah, right. Got it. Which is
Now,
also a temperature influence, right?
do you recognize a great vintage before you harvest? Do you have a good idea? How far out do
Oh, for
you?
sure.
It's an excellent question. I will say we're talking, this is relative. And I compare or contrast everything to where I've worked in the past. So on Long Island, there's a big difference between a bad vintage on Long Island or in central Otago in New Zealand where I worked, or Martinborough where I worked, or even Tuscany where I worked, and California. The a California vintage varies by about this much, whereas those other places, which may get 20 inches of rain in the summer,
Yeah.
throughout the summer, or they get heat waves, we don't have that kind of variability here. So I'm always just grateful for the California harvesting every year. I don't think there's a bad vintage. There might be a vintage that's maybe atypical, 98, 99, 2011, cooler years, lots of rain. So the wines come out different. But there are things that people do in the cellar then, of course, to try and compensate for those years, which are the same things that they do in France, by the way, on the cool years. But we're really blessed here in California with what I would call perfect growing conditions every single year. And the variation is not one that I think is super important. I think you're talking about, to me, I see it as very good vintages versus great vintages. And the answer to your question is, so if I like a particular style of wine, say, I can project to a certain extent based on when was it warm, because we know it's going to be warm at certain times of the year. Did the warmth come early? Did the warmth come in August? Did the warmth or heat event come in October, September? So all of those things. And how dry was it when there was heat? Those are the things that will allow me to anticipate what the wine is going to be like. But I'm my firm belief is that California is just so nice. And I don't, to use the word easy, maybe stretching it a little bit, but I don't think we have bad vintages in California.
Such good perspective. Because I think so often we hear here on this call from Paso winemakers and the challenge of navigating the weather, but the global perspective is it's much less challenging here than it is other places. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is why champagne so rarely has a vintage season, right?
that's exactly right. Yeah.
So, so Jeremy, you've worked all over the world. You let's start. You're coming out of UC Davis. What's the first wine job?
The first one was in central Otago in New Zealand. So it's the southernmost island. Um, it's a South Island rather, and it's near the south. So it's when I landed in Wellington, there were snow flurries, and so this is before harvest, right? So the equivalent of having snow in September here in California. So it was crazy cold. And it was a 5,000 case winery that made almost exclusively Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
So you accepted this job not having visited, I assume.
No, I had no idea, but I've had the wines and I like the idea of extreme.
And it's southern hemisphere. It's cool climate because it's the south part of New Zealand. Um, and you got a sense of what the varietals are then. And you show up in September and it's snowing.
Yes. Yeah, the winemaker picked me up at the airport and I was like, what the hell is going on outside? So that was a particularly hard year for from the perspective of a Kiwi winemaker. For them, this was 2004. It was unusually cool, but I thought it was super exciting. It was my first foreign job. I loved the people that I met there. The wines were really interesting. There were the landscape was, I mean, everything was beautiful. The topography there was really interesting. So I had a blast. But it ended up being a really kind of an early harvest there.
And September is spring there, right?
Uh, I was there in April of 2004.
Okay. Oh, you were saying the equivalent to, got it.
The equivalent to,
Got
yeah,
it. Got it. Okay.
yeah. And then fortunately I was able to get another job at a winery in Martinborough there was still harvest happening up in Martinborough, and it was Syrah rather than Pinot Noir. So this was a winery that was practicing biodynamics. I'm happy to address biodynamics at some point if you want to ask. But it was a later harvest there because of the varietals. So got to work with Syrah, which was the first time I had worked with Syrah, period. And that was great. And then came home from New Zealand. I already had been awarded a fellowship to Antinori's Tignanello Celaya estate. So moved to Italy after New Zealand. And so I had some time in Italy before harvest. I had a couple months. And so studied more Italian. I had taken some Italian in school. So
this is before the new Antinori corporate office opened near Tuscany.
That's exactly right. So this is the fall of 2004.
And so how long, I mean, wow, Antinori's second, tell me if I have this right, second oldest family-run business in the world.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, there was in the cellar. So as you mentioned, there's a new facility, but there was a press in the cellar that Da Vinci had designed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I'm still in touch with their winemaker, Renzo Cottarella. And when I visited Italy last summer, I met up with the former estate manager who had moved on to another winery up in Piemonte. So it was great. I love Italy. I love the food.
Yeah, yeah. How can you not? So you from New Zealand to Italy to Antinori, and how long are you with Antinori then?
4 months.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically,
If I had been offered, a longer time,
sure.
I don't think the Italians were really looking for an American vineyard manager or winemaker. So unfortunately, yeah.
So I guess when you went back, you did see the new facility.
I have not been back. My daughter has been there though.
Oh, I gotta go there. It is pretty amazing facility for sure.
Yeah, I've heard.
Oh, so from then after those 4 months, what's next?
Came back to New York and started. This was this would have been 2005 January, and I started calling from a book on wineries on the Central Coast. So all my friends were getting jobs in Napa and Sonoma. A couple got jobs after school in Oregon. But I'd had some wines from the Central Coast. I'd had a Pinot Noir from Aubin Clement that was memorable. And I just wanted to go somewhere different. And so I was calling first and then sending, paper resumes out to people, and got a job at a winery that was then on the Anaceto vineyards. It was called Tantara. So two partners who owned it, both from Southern California, and I was the only full-time employee there.
Let me pause you there because I'm struck with this contrast of you working in the newest of the new worlds in New Zealand. You're working in legendary old world in Antinori. Where's your head at on wine at this time? Like, how are you thinking between old world, new world? What's resonating with you as you're getting into wine? What are you wanting to pursue based off what you learned?
I don't think I had come to that point yet. I think I was really, and to a certain extent, I still am, open-minded as far as experiences go. And I was not at all even, I was married, and we were not, even though we were in our early 30s, neither of us was really felt settled that we were settling down into an area forever or anything like that. But it seemed like a good opportunity, and that was it. And it was essentially just looking no further than my nose, really.
Okay.
And I was, still just curious about how things were done.
Well, that's fantastic, though. I mean, these incredible experiences, but you're not putting a stake in the ground yet. You're still open-minded and learning new things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I was at that winery for a year. My friend Gary, we had kids the same age and our wives were friends. And Gary owned a vineyard on York Mountain called Shadow Canyon. He had a day job as a commodities broker, but he owned a vineyard and a small winery. And he asked me if I wanted to come and help him out, which I did for 2 years. And it came a point for him, and this was, the recession, when he just thought that he had put all this money in. This is one of my favorite Syrah vineyards still. It's now owned by someone who makes a wine called Rise. But I had planted the Grenache that's there, and it's still one of my favorite Syrah vineyards. But Gary didn't want to make wine anymore, and it fortunately for me coincided with a friend of mine who was winemaker in Napa at a small winery called Seavey, who was leaving and asked me if I wanted to throw my hat into the ring, which I did.
And
So
this is your next project where you shake things up with a big score.
this this was a next project. Yeah. I mean, and Seavey is still one of my favorite Cabernet vineyards. I love it. I'm still close with Art Seavey, who's one of the sons. The owner passed away a year or so after I left, but I was up at Seavey for 3 years. And if all I wanted to make was Cabernet Sauvignon, I'd probably die there, and someone would cart me out when I'm in my hopefully 90s or something. But I love the Central Coast, and I wanted to return here. And I didn't just want to make Cabernet Sauvignon every day, and I love Cab, but I had this kind of thought that I love pizza too, but I'm not going to eat pizza every day or make pizza every day. And I love to eat it too, but again, I like to do some different things. And there's nothing like Paso Robles when it comes to the diversity. And even I think you could make an argument that Mourvèdre and Grenache should be planted in Napa Valley and not Cabernet Sauvignon, given just how things have changed with the climate. But no bank is going to give you money to pull out your Cabernet and plant anything like that. There's too much invested in that from a marketing point of view, from everything else. And here in Paso, I think there's just a lot more openness to experimentation, and just seeing what's going to make great wine. So I had been looking almost the whole time that I was up there. And again, I loved making that wine. And it was fun to be at a cult winery. But I was looking to come back here. And
Yeah,
fortunately,
even over the 25 years that my wife and I have been going there, things keep changing.
yeah,
The Everything moves. What's hip changes. Nothing changes in Napa. It's pretty much, you know, doesn't mean that I love the wine, the Cabernet in Napa. I do. I love
exactly.
it. But yeah, there's everything keeps moving. It's so interesting because everybody's experimenting all the time, like you said. Really
Yeah,
cool.
I don't think there's a wine growing region as exciting as Paso Robles anywhere in the world. I mean, it's certainly not in the old world for all the same reasons that Napa is what it's like. It's too much time has been invested, too much money has been invested, and we're more nimble here in Paso.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So at Seavey, you scored 97, which is not easy to pull off in Napa, just to be clear. That's
Now there's a lot more. So yeah, I got good scores and I think in 2009, I think that was when I got that 97, but there weren't as many 97. There were not hundreds like there are now
right.
in Napa,
Right.
which I mean, there's probably 50 wineries getting 100 or 97 to 100, but it certainly wasn't the case back then. So
Right.
that was nice.
So you're established at a great winery, obviously getting great results. What brings you back to, obviously you had a connection to Central Coast, uh, and fond of it, but what's the opportunity that brings you back?
Um, I came down to I was there was an ambitious vineyard owner, and he had a small winery. I'd rather not even get into this because he made a lot of enemies before I got there and after I was there. But anyway, it was an opportunity to come back down. And then when I was I was out in the vineyard one day, and I got a call from Adelaida asking if I'd be interested in consulting on their Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc Bordeaux varietals. And I had heard about Adelaida. I had never actually been down Adelaida Road. I'd never been on the west side at all. I just came and did my work and went home at that point. And when I went out to Adelaida and met with the GM and drove through the vineyards, I was really excited. I felt this real energy there and potential. I mean, Adelaida's had a long history, long before I got there. And there's a good reason why people have said to me, everyone from Russell Frome to Justin Smith, that some of the most important wines to them that where they essentially cut their teeth as tasters were wines from Adelaida. So it's had a long, great history.
Who was the winemaker back before you? Or some of the people? Anybody we
Yeah.
know? Or
So there was a guy right before me. There was a guy named Terry, and Terry was there for 9 years. There were a couple people in there before him, and then John Munch, who was
oh, right,
the
okay,
original winemaker.
right.
Amazing person, a real Renaissance.
Unfortunately, we lost him. Yeah, of course.
That's right. That's right.
I
Really,
remember going out there in the walk-in days prior to 2020 and 2021. way before that, actually, but it was a barn
Yeah.
by Adelaida Road, a barn.
Yeah. Right.
And you just kind of looked at it and go, oh, if I drive down this road, look, there's a barn.
Right. Yeah, it's been there for.
My memory of the wine, I can't refer to, but it was interesting. But I remember seeing it, and because we were driving around with some friends, and we go, let's go there. But
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's been there for 45 years now, which is amazing. And the family that owns Adelaida, I mean, has been farming the oldest Pinot Noir on the Central Coast, the HMR vineyard, which was planted in 1964. It's the second oldest in California.
That's in the Adelaida district?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Very old vines.
So when you get to Adelaida, what's objective number one? What's the first mission?
Yeah. I mean, so again, I was just consulting. This is 2012, and I would come in and I'd go to the vineyard and make suggestions. This was in maybe July or August. So there was this winemaker, Terry, was there, but I only interacted with him maybe twice. I don't think he left very soon after I started consulting with them, and right before harvest. And so the assistant winemaker at the time was essentially handed harvest for Adelaida. Yeah, I still feel bad for her, but my role was essentially just to advise. I was mostly just interested in asking questions like what they wanted from the fruit, what they expected from the fruit, what the wines were like in the past, what they were thinking from this vintage. And then because there was this bit of turmoil, I was then calling the picks for their crew. So for all of those wines from 2012, and then I would taste the wines in tank and make recommendations about what to do on that particular day and when to drain the tank and press it and that sort of thing.
When you're consulting, are you still living in Napa and coming down?
No, I had just come down. I had just come
Okay.
south. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so at some point, consulting transitions into something more permanent.
Yes. So after that harvest, I was offered the winemaking job. So I'm now the longest term winemaker that Adelaida has had. So this will be my 14th year there.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow. And what has changed about the wines in 14 years?
So I want to go back and address something that Mike said. The first thing that he said was that when Jeremy that he was told that there were a lot of Jeremy put the kibosh on this. Jeremy restricts the usage. I hope it wasn't that. I put, I would say, energy wise, more than 75% of my energy into the vineyard. So we immediately stopped using herbicides. And over the years, we were farming organically and then got certification in 2017. We started picking the grapes in smaller blocks. And so I got rid of some of the larger tanks for smaller tanks to accommodate smaller blocks based on the topography, based on what I was seeing, vineyard health, vine health, that is, and soil differences. So, and I don't think you have to be a viticulturist necessarily. So, if you take a walk through the vineyard and you're looking and you're tasting, vines are developing at different rates depending on all of these things. Is it facing north, south, east, or west, and what kind of exposure there is. So that was where I've put all of my energy, or a large part of my energy. And then those things that the sort of approach that I mentally took or intellectually took, which was to test my assumptions. And so I was curious in 2014, because the easy thing to do is to buy your yeast and bacteria from the local lab, and the yeast has been acclimated to tolerate alcohol or tolerate a certain amount of sugar, a certain amount of the pH. And my understanding of yeast is that they have a hell of a lot to do with the aromatics of a wine. So with that as a basis, I was like, well, why not just see what happens if we don't pitch yeast into the fermenter? And
Using
so
the natural or wild.
yeah, it's wild. And so there's yeast that's going to be on the skins of the grapes that come in. There's also all of the yeast that's built up in the winery over the decades, because it's the same winery. We don't have there's no chandelier hanging in the winery at Adelaida. It's a very production oriented space, by design. So, we can dump the fruit into the fermenter rather than pumping it. So those were some of the changes that I made winemaking wise. But again, the winemaking part is, I think, the most important thing that I do is just decide when to pick the grapes. And the rest of it, the type of fermenter. I mean, we've got 16 concrete fermenters and 4 wood fermenters. I mean, that stuff is, it means this much in the scheme of things. And I know, if you read something in the press, it's like, well, my amphora made the wine. It's a bunch of hooey. So, and I can tell you that because we have some of these things, and I mean, it has some effect, but it's really on the grand scheme of things, it's a very small effect. So that approach and just testing the assumptions that I think one gains either by, that's what you learn, whether it be learned from school, learn from a winemaker you worked with, learn from your neighbor or your cousin Vinny, I don't know, but I think it's still important to every year to check yourself and your assumptions.
So when it comes to picking, we've heard everything from precise measurements, phenolics, pH, to I just taste the grapes and see when I like them. What's your method?
Yeah. So I just had drinks. Admittedly, it was 3 bottles between 3 people last night. But so one of my friends, who's the head of the winemaking at Cal Poly, his name's Federico Casassa, and his whole thing is phenolics. And he studied under the other person who we had dinner with, a guy named Jim Harbertson, who I was in school with at UC Davis, and he's a professor now up in Washington State. And all of the tests that people are doing now on phenolics are based on the work that we did in our lab that he came up with. But the answer to your question there, I don't look at that crap. I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm certainly not going to make a decision based on that, for the simple reason that in order to get the certain amount of large polymeric pigments and tannin and your model number of anthocyanins, malvidin 3 glucoside, that what happens when you're trying to attain a certain number like that is that you're letting sugar get very high, which then means that you have to then add water. So in order to get 1,400 parts of, and I'm sorry, I'm getting in the weeds here, but there's a reason, and you could ignore this, but I'll come to the point that in order to attain this number, by the time you attain that number, the sugar is really high. And then you have to make these other decisions in the winery. And to the extent that I cannot monkey around with the wine, I'm going to do that. So I've tested our wines. I've sent it out. I've done the test in-house to see what our wines are like. And then, I mean, it's been years since I looked at an Adelaida wine. And that was just because I was curious. So the picking decision is largely based. I mean, there's the visual component where I look at the plant, and where is the plant in the growing. And at that point in the growing season, does it look like it's still got some life to it? Are the basal, the lower leaves, are they yellow now? In which case, I feel like I kind of missed I took my eye off the ball. I try not to let that happen, but and I'm tasting, and so there's seed ripeness that people would look at. I don't look at that because the oxidation of the seeds. The seeds are largely following the Gregorian calendar. So if you have early bud break, if you have bud break in February, and you have a coolish season, then the seeds are not going to brown up until much later in the season. But if you have a warmer season, you might be able to have that brown effect. It doesn't influence where I'm picking it. We do measure bricks and TA. I want to have historical records to look back at on these things. And for the next winemaker, if I croak tomorrow or something, that someone who comes in after me will be able to look and have, to the extent that matters to her or him, have some information, because it's important to some people. For me, it's more of a historical thing, and I'll look back and after the fruit has come in, does any adjustment have to be made? Because I don't, I know from my palate, I don't like really alcoholic wines. I also don't like really under alcoholic. I mean, I don't like really thin wine. So there's this kind of, for me, there's this kind of a window when the wine is going to strike all the points that I want it to. And it's not just alcohol. It's the feeling of it, and aromatics are then tied to the alcohol as well. Obviously, same with a banana. You get a green banana is going to smell and taste different than a brown banana that's been sitting on your counter, or a black banana or something. So, I don't want it to be, I want the fruit to be ripe, but not underripe or overripe.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. And speaking of your palate, answer this only if you're comfortable. This is a conversation a few of us were having the other day. What what AVA makes the best cab in Paso for your palate? Produces the best cab, I should say.
Well,
You can waive or decline to answer if you'd like.
I happen to, so I will, I happen to think what we're doing at Adelaida, what we're growing, makes the kind of cab that I want to drink. The principal reason is something that scared the crap out of me when I started working there. The cab has more acid and structure in the Adelaida, the fruit does, compared to Napa Valley. So not to get too, again, down a rabbit hole as far as science goes, but there's a pH scale, right? And higher pH is kind of like soap, and lower pH is like sour candy or something, or lemon, right? The wines in Napa tend to be of a higher pH, and you could throw a number like 4 or something, and it's a logarithmic scale. And so a Napa cab might be a pH of 4, 4.1 or 4.2, and a Sauvignon Blanc might be a pH of 3.1. So somewhere along that spectrum, their wines fall, right? I was worried that the Adelaida cab, because the fruit pH was so low, was going to taste like a Sauvignon Blanc, even though it's a Cabernet Sauvignon. And there are vintages where I think that the acid is probably not to everyone's cup of tea. But it's a hallmark of our wines, and it's something that I really enjoy, because I think it makes you want to keep drinking some more, and it provides some kind of structure, whether you're having it with food or not. Um, yeah. To Mike's point, like and I do think the wine should be able to carry over. You're sitting at the pool. There's no reason why you can't bring this in and have it with your hamburger, right? Or your steak, for that matter.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm holding up a Chardonnay, but you get the point.
Yeah.
And sure, if you want to drink the Chardonnay with your steak, you're more than welcome to. Craig.
Right, right.
But yeah, I've really come to love the cab from Adelaida district for those reasons that it first scared the crap out of me. That acid in the structure, and it's a result of being grown on limestone. It's not anything that I'm doing in the cellar. It's not because I'm picking early or late or anything like that. In fact, one of the things that I found that people will wait for acid to drop out as the season goes along, and in Paso, and that's what naturally happens. The acid's going to drop out, go lower. Not literally drop out, but it goes lower. Right. But in Paso, because we tend to get heat, we get some heat and heat events late in the season. What you end up having then, if you keep waiting for the acid to drop out, the berry is getting smaller because it's desiccating, which then is going to concentrate the perception of acid and the amount of acid by concentration. So I tend to be picking probably earlier to avoid any heat events. I'd rather pick before, as long as the grapes have come to a certain point where I think it'll make a nice wine. I'm not going to wait until it hits some number because I don't like shriveled fruit or raisins.
Got it. Hey, Jeremy, I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we're just pushing past time, and I really want to give you some time to talk about Site too. I think a lot of people are familiar with Adelaide and the amazing work you're doing there.
Thank you.
When I came up for our party, what was that, a month ago or so? I was trying to
Yeah.
connect with you to taste Site, but we just couldn't make it work. But I'm dying to try it, and would love for you to talk a little bit about that project.
Yeah, Site came out of basically sitting in my house in Napa at night and realizing that I didn't really want to drink a lot of big Napa cabs. I mean, this is 2008, 9, 10, 11, a time when the cabs were, I think, pretty people would agree, a consensus that there was a lot of alcohol. They were kind of big and plush. Some might use the word delicious, but I just think kind of like overly plush. And I was drinking a lot of other wines, and I'd always loved, again, the Syrah from the Central Coast, especially Paso and what we were doing on York Mountain. And so I knew the Seavey family was not going to let me make Site there, and it would be impossible to find those grapes, Syrah, Grenache, Roussanne, and Viognier, up in Napa Valley. And so, like, Philippe Melka left Seavey. That was his first winemaker job in Napa because he wanted to do his own thing. And so, Site is, again, like I was saying, the most important thing determining quality in the glass of wine. It's not the egomaniacal winemaker or the fermentation vessel. it's the site and then the vintage, and then farther down the totem pole are these other things that are important. And so I stole from the U.S. Geological Service the triangle. This is a marker of place, so please don't report me to the government. And so yeah, that's it's my sign of respect for the most important thing in the glass. And so I get the fruit from 3 vineyards in Santa Barbara County that I had worked with in an earlier life. So they are Biennacido vineyards, where I get Syrah from. Larner, I went to school with Michael Larner, and so I get Viognier and Grenache and Syrah from him at his vineyard, his family vineyard in Ballard Canyon. And then I get Roussanne from Stoltman Vineyards, which is 1.5 miles away from Larner. And I make about 500 cases a year. I sell I don't have a wine club. I have just a mailing list, and it's first come, first serve. And then I sell to some restaurants. And I keep the top price, which is $65. So the whites are $50 and the reds are $65. But I keep the $65 based on my friend Daryl, who's a surgeon and who could afford to buy $100 bottles and $200 bottles of wine, and who knows more. But for him, he doesn't want to spend more than that. And so I use that as my rule. And I've kept the price the same for about 5 years now. It was $50 before that. And so the fruit's expensive. I'm not making money on that. I happen to just like when especially brown bagging the wine, and people really enjoy the wine, and it turns out to be half the price of the other wine. So
$65 for those vineyards
That's really, yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. Well,
I can speak for some of us here. We all hate Biennacido. It's a joke. No, I see that name. I see that vineyard on the label. I'm immediately attracted to it.
Yeah, it's a pretty special place. It holds a special place in my heart because that was where my first full-time winemaking job in California was back in 2004. So and we made some Syrah from there. So I've been working with that fruit for 22 years.
So when Jason pointed this out to me today, I look, all your vintages you're barrel aging for a while, right? Are you not having subsequent or newer releases?
No, I don't barrel age for a long time. The whites I barrel age for 8 months, and the reds for 22 months. But I bottle age because I think the wines develop complexity. And so the current vintage for the Roussanne is 2021. The current vintage for the Viognier is 2023, and for the reds, it's 2022.
Right. Okay.
I'll get around to releasing the newer vintage.
Can you quickly talk about I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I mean, I have to order some. I mean, just
100%.
Because.
Jeremy, can you quickly talk about Block Z at Biennacido?
Yeah, that's where I get the Syrah from. It's I think there's nothing. It's every vineyard around the world has its own distinct quality, its own imprint on the wines. There's something about Block Z though, for me, that I could smell it immediately. And there are I think there's a dozen wineries that buy fruit from there. I've had the same 1.83 acres since 2012. So I've had the same rows. The vineyard is facing the Pacific. It's far enough away, and I think someone could probably check this on AI, Mike, or Craig, that was, but it's not the coldest vineyard in California. It's very close to that. And I think the Syrah, especially, that comes off of that vineyard, I'm much more a fan of the Syrah than the Pinot Noir for my palate. that comes off of Biennacido, but the Syrah is something else. It's all of the cooking spices and the black olives and the blackberries and blueberries that I associate with a really great Syrah.
So my advice to everybody on this call or that is watching this on replay is before Craig buys all the inventory, hurry and get to the site and buy something.
Yeah, and make sure you know that site is SITE, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Jeremy? Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, by vineyard alone and the winemaker that we know and his track record, that's reason enough to buy it. You don't need to taste it, in my opinion. Yeah. That's just the way it is.
I mean,
That's
I'm
the
happy.
formula
I'm
for
happy to
success.
pour. Yeah, I'm happy to pour the wine. I don't have a tasting room, but I am happy to meet up if anyone comes, and I'm happy to meet up with you somewhere and show you the wine. Again, I can fully respect that some people, that everyone has a different opinion on wine. Some like this, some like that, and I certainly wouldn't want anyone to buy anything that they're not going to be thrilled with. So, but I appreciate the.
I'll repeat this again. Jason and I, we always had this discussion, like winemaker, vineyard, and we'll let Craig chime in once in a while. But winemaker, vineyard, why do you need to go taste? You just buy it, because I've never gone wrong yet that I know of yet. So
yeah. Thank you for that. And thank you for the discussion. I really appreciate it. And I've been wanting to meet you guys virtually and, in person as well when it happens. So for a while. And I think it's super cool that you have this group of people who are so excited about the region. And I'm excited about Paso Robles. I mean, I have been ever since I visited for real, even, and like I said, I hadn't even explored it when I was working at this other place until I got to Adelaida. So I'm glad there are people who share the same kind of enthusiasm that I do.
Just so we can, before we wrap it up here, I know we're getting a little long. What other wines do you like in the area there that you have a particular love for?
I still love Tablas Creek. I really, I respect the hell out of them for doing something that's different in the region. As a region, I think Paso Robles, people have an idea of the wines being a certain way, and Tablas is not that way. And I think when I first started tasting Tablas Creek, I was really impressed by the whites. I think the reds are great now. I'm really enjoying those. I like Jornada a lot. I think what Brian and Steffi are doing with Italian varietals is super cool. I love that they have the restaurant Etto, and that I can pick up all kinds of tin fish and Italian condiments on my way home. So those are two that come to mind as just being, for me, just super cool and different.
Love the Giornata shout out. They just don't get enough press in here, honestly. And they're great people.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to have them on sometime.
Yeah, we should.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian's very influential about visiting southern Italy.
He takes a trip. He takes people there every single year.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thank you for letting us go a little bit long here. And I don't know.
Anybody have any questions? That's what we'd like to.
I do.
All right. Well, there's Mr. Parrot, and Parrot or not.
Hey, Jeremy, I actually have a couple questions for you, because I know you guys are like the highest or one of the highest elevation vineyards. And so do you see an advantage in that? And that I know, and you talked about having a smaller blocks, and do you blend different blocks from different elevations? That would be one question. Then my second question is, how many samples do you do before you actually come to the one that says, okay, this is the one that we're going to bottle?
Okay. Thank you for asking that question because it's apart from, in addition to the limestone, the elevation is the other thing that makes the wines distinctive. Much more, again, than anything that I'm doing with the wines. But we have the highest elevation, the highest in the AVA. So right across from the winery in the tasting room, it's 2,320 feet. And then as you go over to HMR Vineyard, which is about 1.5 miles away, it's between Adelaida Road and Peachy Canyon. So that's at about between 1,750 and 1,850. The elevation, it's interesting because we're not sitting in fog line like places west of us and flatter than us. And in fact, the fact that Tablas Creek is in the Adelaida district and we are in the Adelaida district actually doesn't make any sense to me really, largely because of the elevation and the amount of former marine life in our soils compared to 1,000 feet down where Tablas is. But we've got a lot of different aspects. And the slopes, because of our elevation, so we have the vines planted up to about 30%. Most are about 20%, 25% slope. But what it does, that kind of elevation and the slope, again, limit the amount of water that the vines are seeing, and also expose the fruit in ways that force the plant to try and defend itself. So all of the things that you were talking about, Jason, earlier, just about phenolics, meaning tannin and color and bitter compounds, that those things are generated as a reaction to things that are going on in the outside world, outside the grape. So, especially these class of compounds that include still beans and things that the plant is having to protect itself so that the berry's going to protect itself in order to get to that stage where a bird is going to come down and then eat it and then poop it out somewhere and further the species, right? So I've definitely found, and it's similar in Napa between Valley Floor and Howell Mountain or Pritchard Hill or Spring Mountain, that the wines are just very different between a flat and something that's at a slope and high up. And so I think in general, I'm probably picking earlier. We tend to have bud break earlier than some other districts around us.
Well, you're the first winemaker.
Sorry, and then your question on the sampling, we're taking, if you mean physical samples as far as when we're going to pick, or most recently for us, I could address that, but for us, we're right now blending. We just finished bottling the 2024 Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre, Counoise, Cinsault, and we just started tasting last week the 2024 Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and again with the idea of still keeping an open mind about all of this, I could say, well, I know that Upper Viking Block 6 has consistently, repeatedly come out on top in these tastings, but I still try and tamp down my brain and the memories of that, and instead taste every barrel. So we pull every barrel, we pull samples from the blocks, taste through them, make some kind of, we make notes that we meaning the associate winemaker and myself, Brian and myself, and we take notes on that. And then we'll do that probably 6 times before we come up with a blend. And then when we bring the barrels up to then put into tank for the blend, we'll taste them again, because in the space of a couple weeks or a month, or depending on what you have for lunch or what you had for breakfast, could influence how the wine is going to present itself to you when you're tasting it in the conference room. That will then taste and smell and taste each individual barrel again and see if it's where it was when we had previously tasted it. So that'll go to the 11th hour, because you only have one chance, because once it's in the tank, it's in the tank. So yeah, that's a lot of effort, but it's fun, and it's the opportunity to really focus on just senses.
Oh,
Well,
thank you.
You are the first winemaker I've had that has injected bird poop into our thinking about the wine. Not that it was bad. Not that it was bad. I get it. I get what you're talking about. I get the science part.
Craig was probably in the middle of a Cheeto or something.
I know, Craig.
No.
Craig made you think of bird poop. I get it, but
Jeremy, I Googled it. Classic puff Cheetos, Zinfandel. Flaming hot Cheetos, Pinot Noir.
Okay, wait.
The cheddar jalapenos, you're looking for a California Cabernet. There you go, buddy. That's all for you.
I'm scared of the flaming hot with the Pinot Noir, but I will give it a shot because your suggestion. No, I mean, as far as the bird poop goes, and with all due excuse for the imagery, but I in a certain way, I think I try and look at the whole thing as like an ecologist would, and like what's happening here and how's this going, and this is all part of Mother Nature, right? As we are. And we've been drinking wine for 8,000 years, and my observations are probably have some similarities to how it was being done in Iraq, right. 8,000 years ago, or Greece, or how the Romans were doing it, and so we probably share some things, and probably also are looking for different things and defining the wine quality differently than they were, but try and keep an open mind about it.
I'm always good for a good poop joke, so there we go. But I get the whole seed cycle and how that works, and but it's a good point, and I did understand exactly what you were talking about. But Cheetos, on the other hand, I don't even know what they're made out of, so they're. They certainly aren't called. They're not organic.
Exactly.
So, anybody else have any questions? Comments?
Thank you, Jeremy.
Wait a minute, Steve. You have a comment?
Yes. Well,
Cool.
And a question. So the name of the winery that you are making wine currently for is?
Adelaida.
It is Adelaida. Okay. And if I wanted to get some of the bottles that you've been talking about tonight, I would do.
Thank you for the prompts. You could come to the winery. Where do you live, Steve?
I'm sorry. Eating here too.
Where do you live?
Steve, I live in Southern California. About Mike. I've been through
drop both links.
wines and all that stuff. I just really good wine, and I do a lot of reviews on Vivino and whatnot. But I'm interested in the wine you're making, and you really know your stuff with the wine making and wine growing, which is fantastic discussion, by the way. Big fan of Antinori. That was a fun part of oh yeah, and I worked at Antinori too, So anyway,
Steve,
so
I
I
dropped
that
both
just go,
links in the chat for both Adelaida and Site.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
okay.
I should add, thanks, Steve, for bringing that up. As far as obtaining the wine for Adelaida, we have a website. We're actually offering a deal for you guys. The code is FAN, capital F, capital A, capital N 26.
Right.
So that gives you $10 shipping. Let me see. I think I just want to make sure.
And you have multiple tiers of wine there, right? In the
Yeah.
marketing end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think in general, I should also just plug Paso Robles. I think the best value region in the country for sure. Yeah, we offer wines priced between about, I think the rosé is probably in mid-20s up to $125 for the Cabernet Sauvignon, but we offer several tiers, thanks, Mike, of the Cabernet Sauvignon. So there's the signature level, which is after the matriarch Elizabeth Van Steenwyck was an author, a children's book author, and a Lincoln specialist. And so it's called signature. It's essentially a reserve wine. And then we offer a mid-tier Cabernet Sauvignon, and then we offer one that we call our estate level, which is you could find by the glass at a lot of restaurants. And the same goes for the Syrah and the blends that we do of Mervet and Grenache and Syrah and Counoise. And so
what I find fascinating, Jeremy, is this winery has been around since 1971. That's back in like Rhoda, right? Or
yeah, I think it was.
I mean, or even before Everly. Even
it's in the top 10 is the Everly
right.
might be. I think it's 1981, by the way.
Oh, I don't. Oh, I saw something. Okay, I'm sorry. I must have.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's within the top 10 of the wineries.
Early years,
Yeah.
right? Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
long history.
I don't think there was anything up on the Adelaida Road.
Right.
Back in early 2000s that I remember.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't remember anybody. I do, but they're not there anymore. But anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Hey, Jeremy. Thank you. Thank you for the discussions we had before you came on. I appreciate it. You're a great guy. And we wish you well, and we want your project to move up and to the right, in the financial terminology. And so I'm going to buy some of that wine and give it a go.
I really appreciate. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for everyone there for having me on and giving me some time to talk about the wines.
We're all about the winemaker here. That's why it's called Meet Your Makers.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing what you do. I understand all the effort and everything you're putting into the grape growing and the research and all that stuff, and it's just fantastic. So, and it has to come out in the wine. It'll be obvious.
That's to that point, Steve. I know I'm going to sound really woo-woo for 1 second, but I do think that energy follows intent. So thank you for notating that.
Yeah.
So, Mike, did you have something? No? Okay. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Okay. We'll come and see you soon.
Sounds great. Come on by. Love to see you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.